on, it would sure be nice. Because I know it's just more fun to interact with folks if you can actually see them. Um, so I'm thrilled you're here, and I think we have a combination of alumni and of students, which is really quite ideal. And I'll just say a couple of things. First off, I've been dean. I actually just got an anniversary message on LinkedIn, which makes me realize that it's been exactly 5 years since I became dean of the Colin Powell School. And one of the things that we put at the kind of top of our priority list in my time as dean as a school is helping to connect the dots for our students between what they're studying and what it is they hope to do in their careers. And one of the essential pathways to figuring that out is to meet folks who are doing that work, people who are not way further along, like people with gray hair like me, but rather people who are, midway along, right? Who have had the chance to maybe go to graduate school or law school, who've had the chance to have a job or two and have accomplished a great deal and now can start to reflect on it and share advice for those who are coming behind them. And it seems so basic, and yet as a school and as a college, we haven't done near enough of this. And by the way, it's what so many other colleges and universities are so good at. And so what I want to say as I turn it over to our speakers is to a message to our students and our alums, which is we need both of you in conversation with us and with each other in order for this project of connecting the dots between what folks are learning at City College and what they're going to go on to do in the world to be successful. And we are committed to it. And this program is one of many now that we are having that is about developing and connecting with our alumni and doing it in service to and in connection to our students. And so thrilled to have you with us this evening. Really excited to figure out ways to continue to engage with everybody as we move forward. And most importantly, I do want to just share my great gratitude to our speakers this evening, who some of whom I know, some of whom I know less well, all of whom I admire, and very much grateful that you're spending a part of the evening with us. So thank you. Let me turn it back over to Leslie.
Yeah, thank you so much. Cynthia, Debbie, I can also pass it to you to do a quick intro, and then I'm happy to get us started because I see people on Zoom.
Sure. So nice to see so many folks on the call. I'm Cynthia Gutierrez. I work alongside Leslie in the Office of Student Success at the Colin Powell School. I am the Director of Mentoring and Alumni Relations. And really what our work is planned to do is to create more opportunities like this for alumni to be highlighted and to share their career trajectory. So I'm so glad to see both alums and students here today.
And hi, everyone. I'm Debbie Cheng. I'm the Director of Fellowships in the Office of Student Success. Echoing what Dean Rich and Leslie and Cynthia said, it's so wonderful to see so many of you here today. And I would encourage you, if you can, to turn on your cameras because that will help us see you even better. But really thrilled to hear from our panelists and from you all. Hopefully you have some questions lined up. So I'll pass it back to Leslie.
Yeah. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Andy. So again, a big thank you to our panelists. I had the pleasure of getting to speak to you each individually. And again, it's such a pleasure to be able to share and learn more about your career journey. The reason why we selected you for this panel, again, is because we think that your journey can serve as a big lesson to a lot of our students. And again, today we are joined by a combination of alums, but also seniors, juniors from political science and international studies that are looking to find ways to explore career options after they graduate. So this is great that you're joining us for today. I also want to send out a reminder to turn on your cameras so that our speakers are able to put a face to the names on the Zoom session. And then just to share a little bit very quickly about alumni relations, I want to say now that, once you start your journey here at the Colin Powell School within City College, I want you to remember that you become part of a family, that you become part of a community, not just of alums, but also faculty members, staff members, and also alums, right, that are interested in helping you grow and helping you in your career journey. So that's why the work of alumni relations is important. And I want to share with you all that if you're interested in learning more, there's ways that you can connect with us. So I'm going to put some links on the chat. If you ever want to connect with me, I have a link on there if you want to discuss ways to connect with other alums. If you're an alum and you're interested in learning about some of the resources that we have available for you, that's one way that you can connect with me. I also have the link for our alumni community. So that's also another resource that we have in order for you to be able to connect with our alumni community. So I'm going to be sharing that with you all right now. And again, if you have any questions, my LinkedIn is also on there just for some resources. But again, thank you so much. Okay, and now I'm going to be doing some quick introductions. So again, we have 4 panelists tonight representing different areas within political science. And again, it also applies to people that are interested, that are majoring in international studies. A lot of this also applies to you. So very first up, I have Shariful Khan. So thank you so much, Shariful, for coming. Shariful is a civil rights lawyer at Public Justice. He graduated from City College in 2019 and pursued law school at Yale University and graduated in 2022. Shariful will clerk on the U.S. 10th Circuit Court of Appeals beginning in August of 2024. So again, if you have questions about an area within law, this is a perfect opportunity to do that. Hannah Sophie is also with us tonight. So Hannah graduated with a bachelor's degree in 2012. And she holds a master's degree in comparative politics from the London School of Economics. Hannah has worked within the United Nations for close to 7 years now, and currently serves as the program analyst at UN Women. Again, so to give you an international perspective. Sayed Joseph is passionate about advocating for dismantling systems of oppression and currently serves as the chief of staff for the City Council District 46. She graduated with a BA in political science from CCNY also in 2015, and also pursued an MPA at NYU Wagner. And then finally, Edward Garcia. Edward is the co-organizing and development director for Northwest Bronx Community and Clergy Coalition, where he leverages his extensive experience in tenant organizing and community development work. Edward also obtained a bachelor's degree in political science with a minor in community change studies in 2018. So again, just to give you a range of different career options that are available in political science. By no means are these the only ones available. I want to make that clear, but we wanted to be able to provide you with a panel representing a diverse area within political science. So, and then the first thing that we'll go into is we want to explore what do you do now. So our speakers are going to share a little bit about the work that they're doing and also how did they get there. And I want to start off with Shariful. So Shariful, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, I see you. So the very first question for you, I'll pass it on to you. And I do want to send out a reminder that we should try to keep this under 2 minutes, your responses. I wish we could ask a bunch of questions, but unfortunately we are limited by time. But very first question for you is if you could share more about your role as a civil rights lawyer at Public Justice and the impactful work that you're involved in currently right now.
Sure. I'm glad I'm going first. I don't really want to follow everyone here who sounds so impressive. I'm really excited to hear their answers. But really quickly, I'm Shariful. I'm a civil rights lawyer at Public Justice, where I tackle sex and race discrimination cases all around the country, mostly related to education. And so a good example of one of our cases is this case involving the estate of Nigel Selby. Nigel was a Black gay student in Alabama who died by suicide after experiencing severe and pervasive discrimination based on his race and sexuality. When he reported the discrimination to the school responded in a really terrible way. The principal told him to go listen to Black people music to cheer himself up. And eventually he died by suicide when he felt like he could find no support in the school system. So he filed suit on behalf of his state, and we recently won that case on behalf of his family, and not only got monetary support for his family and building a scholarship to school that honors him, but also systemic change that will hopefully make policy reform at the school that will help students in the future avoid that kind of discrimination. So that's like a little bit of the kind of work that we do. And I think the second part of the question was, or the part of the question that I think relates to this is, how did I end up in this work and what motivates me to be in it? And for me, I really see anti-discrimination work is anti-poverty work. And as someone who grew up, as I'm sure most of you did on this call, an immigrant in New York, going to public schools here, attending CUNY, I really see a safe and accessible education as a powerful way, and maybe one of the most effective ways to attain economic mobility. So when that education is interfered with because of discrimination, because you go to school and you don't feel safe there because you go to school and the principal is telling you that you should act a certain way or that you shouldn't act a certain way because of the color of your skin, or because of your sex and sexuality, that can really interfere with the person's education and their right to education. So for me, the work that motivates me, or the way that I'm motivated, is really related to anti-poverty, which is something that I got a lot of experience in at City College. So try to keep my answers quick. I probably spoke really quickly there, but hopefully they get you a little insight into what I do and why I do it. Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Moving on to Hannah. Hannah, for you, I know your journey has been, going from completing your bachelor's in political science and then moving on to do graduate school, eventually having a role with UN Women. So if you can tell us a little bit about that journey and also more about what your organization does currently.
Yes, thank you, Leslie. And hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. So yeah, I'm happy to speak to both parts of the questions, trying to keep it short. So yeah, how I got to sort of my journey leading me to work for the UN is not really straightforward. It's been a sort of journey of iterating my career and seeing sort of what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And I think that's one of my advices also for you, right? To also not shy away from trying out different things. So yeah, after I graduated first, I was working in a law firm, which very quickly I found out it wasn't for me. And then I sort of moved into forming my own startup, looking more into sort of business management, trying to also get skills in that. And with that, I also started working then in consulting. So trying to really look into a few different areas, as you can see. But that has really helped me to sort of shape up my skills, which I will also go into a bit later. But from then going into my back to my roots in political science was pretty much inspired by the refugee crisis, or so-called refugee crisis, right? That happened in Europe starting from 2014. You may have heard from that in the news as well, where literally millions of refugees came into Europe at one point. I mean, it's not a new issue, right? I mean, migrants and refugees have always been coming to Europe, or the same to the US, right? But at that point in time, it was really sort of a large influx that has never been there like that historically. So with that, I really got engaged in sort of the refugee work, being active in refugee camps, providing humanitarian assistance on the ground. And that inspired me again to go back to grad school, eventually back to political science. And yeah, after I completed my degree, I then started working for IOM, which is the UN's migration agency. I worked there for 4.5 years on project management and project development. And then sort of felt like after 4.5 years that it was time to move on again and gain some other experiences. So I then started working for UN Women, which is where I'm working right now. So just to give you a quick, very brief overview of what we do, because it's really a lot of different things, but there are 4 key pillars. One pillar is on political governance. So this is about empowering women to take on political leadership roles, but it is also about shaping policies and laws worldwide in favor of women. And then we also work on women's economic empowerment. That's another pillar. The third pillar is ending violence against women. And the last pillar is working on women, peace and security, as well as humanitarian action and disaster risk reduction. So it also entails sort of climate change initiatives that we're working on. And to put that into a more concrete example, so in Colombia, for example, you might have heard of those peace negotiations now, also with the FARC. So we're making sure that women are included in those peace negotiations and their needs are heard as well, and coming up with an action plan. But we're also working, for example, in Fiji and Asia Pacific, very closely with women market vendors, right, to upscale their skills in terms of their business entrepreneurship. With that, yeah, I hope I gave you a quick snapshot of what we do. We work in over 80 countries, so as you can see, it's quite a lot of diverse type of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Again, part of the reason is the diversity in the work and the topics that you're involved in. So I hope students and alums that are here that are interested in doing that kind of work internationally are able to learn from your experience. Sayeh, for you, I know you're passionate again about the advocacy work that you do, and I know you've worked with organizations like Citizen Action of New York, Black Youth Project 100, Brooklyn Defender Services. So I'm interested to hear how these experiences influenced your approach to advocacy, and how that plays into your current role as Chief of Staff for City Council work.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me here, y'all. I would say each of these organizations I worked at prior to being a chief of staff had different approaches to addressing systematic issues. So Brooklyn Defenders is obviously a public defender office. So for them, their strategy was service provision in terms of being public defenders, but also they had a unit of social workers as well as our policy division, which I worked in, to do city and statewide legislative fixes that was more equitable for communities. And then with Black Youth Project 100, their approach to the work was a lot more around like abolition, liberation for Black communities who have been historically oppressed. Their approach was a lot more organizing, political education, community organizing, and mutual aid structures. And then for Citizen Action, they took an approach of policy organizing, but also electoral politics. So each of these organizations, though the work was about like addressing systematic issues, they each had like a strategic approach to it that was somewhat similar, but also different. I think all of those experiences then kind of like plays a role in my chief of staff role. Because as a chief of staff, you're technically a jack of all trades. Like you literally have to know a little bit, but a lot about every single issue that comes up, like the law, the Israel-Hamas issue. You need to know about housing, you need to know about education, you need to know about public safety. Like it needs to like spread the gamut. And then your ability to both navigate political issues, legislative issues, budget, but also just the politics. Like you have to be able to navigate and kind of maneuver through all of these. So I think all of these experiences prior helped me build the relationships, but also like the strategic mind to be able to like navigate my current role as a chief of staff.
Thank you so much. And I know it's a lot to cover in one question, so I hope you're able to share more in the following questions. Edward, for you, I know you have nearly a decade of tenant organizing experience, which is, again, a great accomplishment. And with that experience, I would like for you to, if you can share or highlight a specific instance, where your advocacy efforts impacted the community, and just tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are right now with your work.
Yeah, thank you all for having me here, and it's a pleasure. First of all, my name is Edward. I am an immigrant from the Dominican Republic, and I call the Bronx my second home. Shout out to anyone here from the Bronx. And yeah, I mean, I never saw community organizing as a career, and it was an opportunity that I was agitated to participate. Sometimes as community members, we're blind to a lot of the issues that are impacting us daily, and often we even normalize them. And I had the privilege to find a community in the Bronx that wanted to see me succeed, but also that had a commitment to see the entire community succeed. And that's what brought me into organizing. One, I think that many organizing efforts are often led by people that are not from the community and people that often are not close to the issues. And for me, there was a commitment to change that dynamic and to ensure that because of my deep desire to ensure that others don't go through the same housing insecurity that I was experiencing, that the same issues that I was experiencing as a high school student many years ago, that I wanted to change that. And so that's what brought me to organizing. I have been doing community organizing for a really long time for a nonprofit called Northwest Bronx, which is a member-led organization in the Bronx and has been around since the 70s during the arson in the Bronx. And we have been also thinking about how to really shift the way that sort of housing work has been done also as well. And I mean, so specifically to your question, I mean, some of the most impactful work that I have done, has been to just, I think in general, seeing, tenant associations or, just regular community members be able to, hold the landlords accountable, stop evictions, and also just like being able to win the necessary repairs that people deserve, people who have rights and pay rent, but also like helping people really see themselves as a potential owner of their homes. And that has been my commitment in the last few years, to think about ways that not only do we fight for better living conditions, but like, can we execute strategies that are bringing property owners to sell properties to the tenants, that are helping to put together acquisition campaigns. And that has been my commitment in the last few years, kind of building up from my tenant organizing background.
Thank you so much for sharing, Edward. And so I just wanted to highlight that in the chat, I added some notes. Each of the panelists has their email listed, but also their LinkedIn accounts. So if you want to check out a little bit more about their journey, learn about what they've done in their current role, but also previously, that's a way that you can connect with them. So just wanted to point that out. Moving on to the next section, and I want to say we did some work in terms of incorporating questions from students and alums into the panel discussion. So this is where we're going to ask, and hopefully the questions that you all submitted, I hope you see them reflected in the next couple of questions. So in no specific order, I mean, I'm going to ask whoever wants to jump in from the panelists, but I want to know what inspired you to pursue political science at City College? Why political science, and also why the Colin Powell School? So whoever wants to jump in first on that question.
I feel like I have a really easy answer, which is that I wanted to be on a pretty building on campus. But in actuality, I feel like for me, it was, I really wanted to major in political science and be in the Colin Powell School because I knew, one, that the programs had really excellent professors. I'd heard about Professor Struening and Professor Bernstein, who was, in political science back in my day, and people raved about them and raved about like learning so much and getting so much support from them. And I really valued that, especially as you all know, in a big school like CCNY, it can be hard to find professors that you connect with and feel like you're not getting swept up in the masses. And finding professors who you really connect with and who care about you and care about teaching you was really meaningful. So that was one aspect of it. And the other aspect for me was that I knew political science, or I assumed political science would be a really general degree. And for someone who wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do with my career in my freshman year, which I hope is most of you, I hope you guys are all figuring it out as you go. It was helpful to go into a program or degree where I felt like the application would be not universally applicable, but at least, teach me something that I could apply to different circumstances. And I knew having a deep understanding of the political systems of the US and other countries abroad would help me no matter what career path I eventually followed. So those are for me, it was pretty building, great professors, and a lot of my friends were doing it, and it seemed like a really great program. And of course, a really excellent degree that I thought would help me no matter what career I ended up pursuing.
Right, thank you. I'll pass it on to Hannah if you want to share why political science and why the Colin Powell School.
Sure, thank you so much.
So yeah, a few reasons. I would say number one, political science, because I also have some personal reasons for that. So my father was involved in humanitarian work in the Kosovo War in the 90s. So he frequently went on missions when I was growing up. So that really had inspired me to sort of work on having an international impact, also seeing how the politics work behind conflicts and all of that. That really always was an interest of mine. So I felt like by studying political science, I could really sort of understand sort of what's behind all these news and everything that's coming up on a daily basis. And then also in the long run, of course, being able to work in that field and have an influence towards the better. And so I was looking for different political science programs. And I quickly found the program at the City College. What inspired me to apply was pretty much all these different programs that were offered, such as the Colin Powell Fellowship, of course. Back then it was still called the Colin Powell Center and it was much smaller. So I'm very excited also to see how it's growing. Because that's such a great opportunity. I was able to do that fellowship for 2 years and also do some service learning as part of that, which was really amazing because it allowed me to put into practice what I was learning, like really on the ground working with the community. I was doing that service learning with We Act for Environmental Justice. So that was really great. And then, of course, also the professors. So I just echo what Shariful was saying. I had amazing professors such as Professor Krinsky and Professor Boudreau, which really taught like different topics as well. So I think also in terms of political science, echoing what Shariful was saying, there's so many different topics within political science that you can choose from, right? So I took courses in women in politics, international environmental governance with Ambassador Dry. So actually there was he came in as an ambassador, but then also teaching, which was really an amazing opportunity as well to have his class. So I think, those are the number of reasons. And I think also political science teaches really great skills beyond sort of this understanding of the political context and how that functions. I think it also allows you to gain skills in sort of writing policy analysis, policy briefs, and sort of, just having this analytical way of thinking. I think that's a great asset that one gains from studying political science. Thank you.
Yeah, and also just I want to add that you mentioning the transition and the growth of the fellowship programs made me think that some of you might not know that we have a bigger space. So hopefully you all get to visit campus so we can show you around the new space that we have now at the Colin Powell School. Edward.
Yeah, and for me, it was a very complicated journey because I started my undergrad at Lehman, and I got to the Girls School of Engineering. And as the comrade mentioned here, that I think we're all like are really testing out the waters and figuring out like what really we wanna do. And I really hated it and was like looking for a different classroom experience and really enjoyed the Colin Powell School and really enjoyed learning from like John Krinsky, who I think is a great instructor, and many other instructors who I think have a deep commitment to like also a lot of this, like the things that they're teaching, right? And like that are really grounded in community and that are like really open to helping like meet you where you at and really like help you leverage also your own like knowledge and expertise. And I think we can have very different learning experiences that like is highlighting like also our lived experiences as well. So I really enjoy the classroom experience and also just being able to like even connect with professors as movement leaders as well that are also participating in like a lot of community work that they also deeply care about.
Thank you, Edward. And again, John Krinsky wasn't able to be here tonight, but I'll share that you all sent his remarks also and mentioned him in our panel today. Sayed.
To be honest, if I were to say if I remember much from college, I would be lying because I don't. I spent most of my time in college focused on playing volleyball. And I think for me, when I initially went into college, like I'm an immigrant to this country, and like my mom was like, "You're gonna be a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer. Nothing else mattered because that's the career fields we come here to America to be in." And like I tried the whole like chemistry classes. I think I spent like maybe 60% of my time in lecture falling asleep in the back of class. And like it just wasn't working out for me and like the science. So like being a nurse was not going to work out for me. And I volunteered at a hospital. I hated being in a hospital. I hated the smell. I just, it wasn't working out for me. So I was like, what are my other options? I'm like 2 years into this. So I like figured I tried my other options. I was really interested in like anime. So I'm like, let's study Asian studies. But that wasn't a major. So that became my minor. So I needed a major, and then I had like a group of friends who were applying to SCAD and ARPS program. And I'm like, oh wow, that's a really cool program, but you had to make a poli-sci major. So like, okay, so I focused, I did summer classes, winter classes, and I caught up to where I was a political science major. And I'm like, maybe being a lawyer could be the third option on my mom's checklist that I could become. And then through the SCAD and ARPS program, I realized I am really, really bad at like standardized tests. So like the LSAT was just not working out for me either. But I did like the political science courses. It like made you think a lot about theory. But like for me, as someone who really believes in like oppressive systems, you always have to like sit and think about like how a lot of political science are like grounded in like white supremacy and the ways in which white men structured this country to what it is today. And that was not necessarily incorporated, but it still gave you a really foundational political understanding of like how the US democracy was made as someone who's not from this country, but someone who wants to work in this mindset and work it in government. I think for me, that was like really important to have. So yeah, I landed in political science because I was somewhat interested, but like the scholarships around it was a lot more conducive for me. And then I thought I wanted to go to law school, but I'm not good at standardized tests, so I didn't go to law school. So I did my MPA instead. So it kind of connected just more to like what I was good at per se. So yeah, that's kind of how I experienced the political science major and how I kind of tied into where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And I'll stay with you because again, the next question follows your pursuit of an MPA program around policy analysis, but this time at NYU Wagner. So interested to hear about what prompted you to pursue graduate school after your BA, and also how has that program informed the work that you do right now at City Council?
Yeah, I think doing the MPA was one of two things. One, it was like, okay, I'm not gonna go to law school because I'm not gonna do the LSAT again. What are my other options that kind of exist in the realm of like policy? So then I applied to NYU Wagner. I got in, I focused more on policy analysis, and like halfway through, I decided to also do a second major of management. With that, I think undergrad gave me like the theoretical understandings that kind of ground a lot of these structures. And then grad school gave me like the actual skill set to like how do you analyze and like how do you actually go about creating solutions. So a lot of the work that I did was around quantitative data analysis. So how do you pull data and how do you kind of do regressions and do estimates about if you pass this law, or for example, if you give a universal basic income of $1,000 to new moms, here's the projected impact it could have on life expectancy, on their projected income in like 5 years. Like that was kind of the skill set I learned in grad school. I also learned how to write very succinct policy memos, but also through like the network of being in grad school, you kind of learn a lot about coalition building. And no matter where you are, like in terms of workspaces, if there's an issue you're really passionate about, you always have to be able to build coalition, because that's kind of the driving force around a lot of the policy and structural changes that we see. So I think grad school really gave me like the skill set to be more effective around the issues I wanted to address.
Thank you for sharing. I think this is an important question, and part of the reason why I ask is because, you know, that's a question that a lot of our students have, especially our juniors and seniors who start thinking about, well, what am I going to do after I graduate? Do I pursue graduate school? You know, do I have to pursue it right away? Should I wait a year? Should I start working? And you all on the panel tonight represent different options after graduating. So thank you for sharing that. Hannah, similar to you, I know you have a diverse background, academic background as well. You know, you did your master's degree with the London School of Economics. But you also pursued a certificate, right, from a certificate in business management from Baruch College. So if you can share a little bit about how those certificates sort of tie into the work that you're doing now with UN Women, and why do you find them important in the role that you're in right now?
Yes, thank you. So I think definitely it has helped me quite a lot to have those sort of different academic experiences, because they all are transferable, I would say, to the work that I do. I think, as I mentioned before, political science to me was very important to have that large, like this overview and understanding of how also the international system works, which is quite important for the work that I'm doing right now, right? So I mentioned we also work on changing laws in countries, right? So it's very helpful just to know how that even works, or with the peace process in Colombia. But we're also working on crisis prevention in Mali, for example, right? So that has been super helpful, just having this political science perspective and being sort of aware and have this, sort of a background understanding also of the historical part, right? So I also minored in history, and I think also a lot of the political science courses, they also touch on a lot of that history. I took one course also with Professor Boudreau on Asia Pacific and the politics there and the dictatorship. So it's just very, it's been super helpful just having that background knowledge. So that's one thing. And then on the business management side, I think it's been very helpful to have these more quantitative skills. I would say I totally agree with Shaye as well. Like this quantitative analysis, which sometimes may be lacking from political science, or have I found, at least in my undergrad, that I didn't take so many courses, which I would advise you taking them whenever you have the chance. So to take statistics and more advanced statistics beyond the basic ones, because that's very helpful as well in doing that sort of analysis and that forecasting, right? That is very important for our work, for example, as well, to see how can we sort of, the work that we're doing right now, what kind of impact does that have on the women that we work with? So very similar, actually, echoing JJ on that as well. And then also in terms of business management at large, right? The other skills that I've gained, for example, sort of marketing, right? Which is also very helpful when you do project management, which sort of doesn't come up so much in political science, I would say, has been very helpful, because in the end, also when working on projects, for example, it's very important to also market them in a way to the donors, right? To fundraise for them, to fundraise for the projects that you want to actually implement. It's funding is always important, but then also doing the financial management of the projects, developing projects, which is sort of like writing a business proposal, right? It's very similar in that sense. So I really advise you, if you're interested in getting also into this route of developing social projects, I think it's very helpful to also look into these sort of skills. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, very important how you've been able to just combine these different academic programs, you know, to be able to build up the work that you're doing. So thank you for sharing as well. Shariful, for you, I know your academic journey has been from going to City College, pursuing a BA in political science, and eventually going over to Yale Law School. So if you could share how those two academic experiences helped shape your career choices afterwards.
Sure, yeah. So I always say that going to CCNY was the best decision I ever made in my career. Of course, the professors and classes are great, but I learned so much from my classmates. And once you talk to your classmates and once you leave CCNY and you realize how unique it is to be in a space where, you are attending school in the middle of New York City, your classmates are immigrants, veterans, they're working in the day and coming to class at night, they're union organizers, they're everything under the sun. And you really get to realize how unique of an experience that is. I mean, like one thing I'll just say over and over again is that coming to CCNY and meeting the classes that I did and meeting the people that I did will forever shape the career choices and things that I do for the rest of my life. So, I'm early enough in my career where I'm not sure, what I'll end up doing forever. But I know my career path, whether I end up working in labor or antitrust or civil rights, will forever be shaped by the conversations and experiences I had with my classmates at CCNY. Yeah, well, and I think Saye really explains it well. Grad school and attending Yale helped shape these very fledgling interests and focus them. So, I went to CCNY. I learned what interested me. I learned that what anti-poverty was. I learned why I cared about it. And then I went to law school and I learned, well, there's a lot of ways to tackle anti-poverty work, and you can do that in the ways that maybe all this color are doing through, organizing, through policy change, or you can do it through litigation. And I learned that I enjoyed litigation. I like being in a courtroom. I like saying, hey, I'm suing you because you did something wrong. That's like very fun to me. And in pursuit of that, I got to work in clinics and I got to learn the mechanics of bringing a class action lawsuit, for example, and learning another example is learning how to utilize press and media strategy to then pressure a defendant into a settlement when they might otherwise want to prolong litigation and wear you down. There's a lot of things that I learned in law school that I would have not have learned in undergrad. But I think the thing is that I learned a lot. I got to learn the skills and the strategies because I initially had the interest and passion in talking to my classes at CCNY. So, I feel like school is one of those things where you don't really appreciate it until you're out of it. I remember waking up to go to school at CCNY. I lived in Queens, and so it's an hour and a half commute every day, as I'm sure like half of you are doing the same thing. And I remember just being like, oh, I really don't want to go to class today. I really want to like stay in bed and just hang out. And now that I'm out of law school, I'm out of my education, I look back on those days and I think about those conversations. I think about those experiences. I think about all the amazing people that I met. And I'm just like so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for the ways that those experiences will forever shape my career.
The main point that I got from that is that City College is where you got the inspiration from. So thank you for that shout out to City College and then the Colin Powell School.
I think that's right.
Yeah. For Edward, for you, you're an example of somebody, and I know this based on our conversation, but you're an example of somebody that while you were in college, you had this opportunity to work in the organization that you're in right now. And you've been really, it's been a great opportunity for you to build up from there. So if you can share a little bit about the transition from, getting your bachelor's degree in political science and your minor, and then how did that go along to the current role that you're in right now, right, as co-organizing and development director? How did that transition happen and how was that like for you?
Yeah, I think that like I always ask myself like what was like the next move for me, and also thought about grad school, and I think that like I found that like there was so much learning that I got through being in community, and that like we need a lot of partners to be in this movement that are really important, and that like also just building the right analysis is like also the right moved and sort of the way forward to be able to sort of guide and be able to like build a container for the work to continue. And for me, there was a deep commitment to learning, to being challenged, and to also like take on work that I was really afraid of. And I was really privileged to just be in a organization that was committed to seeing me thrive, and also that was really to invest. So that was really helpful for me to also succeed. And I think that is kind of like my piece of advice, to also build like a network of people that are, willing to like step up for you, that are willing to invest in your leadership. And unfortunately, like, retaining organizers and community organizers across the city is a really hard thing. And I think that like, many groups are looking to commit to investing more in their staff to be able to retain them for a longer term. And so for me, I mean, the transition was relatively easy, since I was already doing this work already. But I think I have been committed to also to ensuring that more people from City College and also across the city see community organizing as a career that they can either kind of start and like go other places. And like often that commitment to grassroots organizing is really valuable to multiple employers. I think like just being willing to be held accountable, and also to build a network of people that are holding you accountable from a place of love is what has really helped me succeed. And that also has challenged me to take on leadership roles that I wasn't prepared to take on, that I was afraid to pursue. And I've been grateful to be privileged to be in that position.
Thank you also for sharing that, because I mean, I that's something that I also reflect on, right? I'm also an alum of the Colin Powell School, and I should have shared this at the beginning, but I majored in economics and international studies, and as a student, a lot of the questions that I would ask myself is, what can I do right after I graduate from college? Should I do the master's program? Should I start working? And I say that to say, because I know a lot of you here present, seniors and juniors, must be thinking about the same things right now. So I want you all to know that you have support. As you see from the different panelists that we have on here, their career journeys has been very diverse. And so definitely, there's opportunity for you to explore. There's also opportunity for you to connect with people to get a sense of what certain careers might look like. So thank you for answering those questions. I want to shift it over to looking forward, and towards the next section, I want to have a Q&A session, and we're doing great on time. So in the chat, I added the names of our panelists along with the area of work that they're currently in. And there's a reason for that, because we're going to move on into advice, right? So for our panelists, I really want you all to think about within your role, right? What advice would you give students and also alums and professionals who want to succeed in your field? What kind of advice would you give them to be able to make that transition, and also for them to be successful in that role that you're in right now? So, Edward, I could stay with you on that one, right? You're doing community organizing and development work. What advice would you have for people?
Yeah, I think I mean, first of all, most groups will write literally like asking people for experience in community organizing. And most of the time, that is not true. I think like what groups are looking for to hire are people from the community that have the right analysis and who are very clear about their self-interest and how, maybe those issues matter to them. I mean, my best advice is like, one, get involved in like the local organizing in your community. And like, that's also a huge thing to do, regardless of like organizing as a career or like just like, I think like it's important for you to just stay connected. And yeah, like just like offer yourself and your time to organizations that are doing great work in your community. That's my best advice. Yeah, and like I think if you are really clear about like what is your self-interest, I think it will really help you understand, like exactly what issues, you want to see yourself sort of supporting, what fields where you like really can articulate like this is like how this important, like this is how this is important to me, and why I want to do this work. And for me, like what's the difference for understanding like where that like this kind of community development work and community organizing was the place that I wanted to invest energy and time.
Thank you, Edward. I'll pass it on to Hannah for international development. Any advice from you?
Yes, thank you. So just a few different types of advice, I would say, but I think one is not to shy away from trying to also start with an internship within the United Nations. I think sometimes it sounds a bit scary, at least that was how it was to me. For many, many years, I actually didn't apply for anything at the UN, not even internships, because I always felt like, oh, it's so hard to reach. There are always 1,000 people applying, and anyhow, it's not possible. But I think definitely try if you're interested in international development. There are many internship positions, and nowadays also they're paid. They used to not be paid, but this is very new. The UN started paying internships. So I think that's really an amazing opportunity, because before, for me also, that was one aspect, right? I can't just go somewhere not having the funds and doing an internship for free and moving somewhere abroad, right? That, I mean, that's something that where you also would have to have your own money for before. So nowadays it's actually most of them are paid. So that's really amazing. So for now, for UN Women, for example, there are several internship opportunities out there. So if you go to the different websites of the different UN entities that you might be interested in, whether it's like UN Women, UNHCR, UNDP doing development work, or UNEP for environmental work. So, right, just have a look at the different UN entities that are out there, depending on the different topics. Look on their websites. And really look for those internship opportunities, because they're usually a good stepping stone to also then get full-time positions. And also you can see if you like that work, right? And then I would also advise to, as mentioned before, sort of try to get different skill sets, because right now there's a big move also within the UN to upskill, sort of move into this UN 2.0, to really use behavioral science, for example, strategic foresight, innovation, data analysis, to use those skills to sort of increase the impact that the UN can have also on the ground. So I think it's very helpful to also look into those new different skills. I think also behavioral science, for example, is very interesting, and oftentimes also comes up in the area of political science, right? So sort of to see how you can, for example, now talking about women's rights, how can we change the behavior of men to decrease violence against women, right? So that's one aspect. How can we make that social norms shift and culture shift in that area, for example? So yeah, just for you to look at those different skill sets, I think that's also very helpful. Thank you.
I want to echo that as well, because I know you mentioned internships are important, and also gives you insight into what are some of the different career options that you have. So I do want to highlight that I added a link for our internships program for our seniors and juniors present for you to check out. The Colin Powell School does offer career and internship support. So if at any point you're interested in checking those out, please go to the link. Shariful, for you, it would be for civil rights law, or law in general, right? If you have any advice for our guests.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, Leslie, you are really on it with these links. We're really quick. So I want to shout you out for that. My advice, I think, is going to be a little bit more general, just because I feel like it's, I could give like very specific advice about law, but I don't think it would be applicable at this stage for most of you right now. But I think what is helpful is something that I would have loved to hear about your scale, which is that it's really, really good to stop trying to plan everything out. Those of you on the call right now are probably extremely type A. You're on a video call listening to me ramble at 6:30 p.m. on a Thursday. You care about your career, and you're probably thinking really deeply about, how to achieve your goals. And that's amazing. And I really, really respect that. And I certainly encourage that. And I don't want to tell you not to do that. But drop your 5-year plan to the extent that you can. Be open to opportunities. If someone texts you about a cool job or experience that sounds interesting, take it. I think the most exciting jobs and really the most exciting kind of life is the one where you have passions and you pursue them without necessarily focusing on a set idea of exactly how you'll pursue that. And I think you see a little bit of that on this call already. You know, the people on this panel are really amazing and really interesting, and I'm learning so much from them. But I think if you ask any of them, and maybe I'm wrong, if you ask any of them if they could have imagined where their career would be 5 or 7 years ago, none of them could have said, I know exactly where I'll be. I know exactly the job I want, and I'm taking this step and this step and this step to get there. At least I certainly could not say that about myself. And I feel like one of the ways that I found out what I was interested in and what I cared about and the places, that I thought would be the most effective place for me to, develop my skills and learn things is by being open to those sort of opportunities. So, I won't ramble forever because it is 6:30 and I'm sure people are getting hungry. But yeah, I would really encourage people to step away from the 5-year plans as much as possible.
I'm sure that resonated also with a lot of the people present here today, because it's a question that I've always had for myself as well. I feel like there's always a sense of fear, right? And in that knowing exactly what you want to do. But just by you all being here tonight, I want to echo that that's something that you learn along the way, and also by connecting with people like our alums tonight in our panel. So thank you, Shariful, for that note. Sayed, for you, I know you're doing local government work and also advocacy, so I'll pass it on to you for some advice.
Yeah, I would echo everything that's been said. I definitely agree of like giving yourself some grace of like not having it planned out and figured out, or like if you apply for something and it doesn't go your way, or you get something, you do it for a week or a couple months, you're like, this is actually not what I want to do. Like, I think give yourself the grace that's okay. Coming from a government and advocacy perspective, my advice is like, I'm hesitant to tell people to like volunteer here, intern here, get all these jobs, because burnout in government and advocacy is so real right now. Like, if you were to ask me like a year ago, like how I was feeling, I'd be like, I'm burnt out, because we went from 2020, the height of a pandemic. You had all the protests that were happening. You had like the years of the pandemic, and you had all these things happening. And like advocacy groups were constantly on the ground. Government folks were like constantly butting heads. Like, it's been a lot of stuff happening, and that's just a constant cycle. So I'm always telling people to like really be like, yes, have aspirations, but as you go along, like really be mindful of like burnout, and like setting up some boundaries for yourself around rest, because you don't want to fall into that habit of like constantly being on the go, constantly doing, constantly trying to get something, just constantly going. I really want people to like, I wish I learned back then how to be able to like pause, stop, and rest. Because I think we don't learn that often in this work, where especially in advocacy and government, because a lot of the work that we do is so tied to our identity. So we feel that we constantly have to be addressing the issue. We constantly have to be doing something because it's us, it's our people, it's our community. And that's kind of what leads into burnout. So my advice would be like, if you can now, like just learn how to like set some like boundaries of where you pause, stop, and just rest. Because that's so crucial for your own sustainability and your own vitality in the ways in which you show up in the work that you do. I think that definitely would be my advice.
I think that's a beautiful way for us to move on to a Q&A section. I know somebody submitted that question about how to have a work-life balance in the work that you do. So thank you for sharing that as well, Saye. So okay, I want to open it up for questions from anybody on here tonight. If there's any questions that you would like to ask our panelists, I encourage you to use the raise hand feature, and we'll call on you. And we'll be monitoring the chat as well. If you have any questions, we'll keep an eye out for that.
I see Lewis has his hand up. You can unmute, Lewis.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I have a small question, but first of all, I have the feeling of gratitude of watching you guys speaking, because you guys tackle a lot of issue that for the past couple of weeks I have been having conversation. Even yesterday I had the same conversation with Leslie. So it's a relief for me hearing somebody who were in the same shoes going through pretty much similar feelings that I'm experiencing right now, because I'm a senior studying international studies. So I have 2 more semesters left, and I'm in that dilemma of deciding what direction to take, and the uncertainty of not knowing what can happen tomorrow is something that is burning inside. But at the end of the day, this experience, for example, today, it's kind of relax me a little bit, and I do appreciate you guys. But I have a question to Anna, and I think also Say mentioned this a little bit. If you had to redo everything again, if that was the case, hypothetically speaking, what would the direction would be? Because I see your past, like you did like paralegal, you did different kind of job, which is not, some of them not related to what you're doing right now. If you had to redo that again, how that would be? Or if you're gonna change something, or you wanna leave it the way it was?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Actually, yeah, so that's how I started also, right? Today was the panel discussion mentioning that my journey was not straightforward at all. And it seems maybe sometimes a bit all over the place, which of course in an ideal world, I would say, oh, I would have straight known, you know, what I want to do, and I would have embarked on that journey, because I probably would have been advanced even more now in my career. But I think in the end, I wouldn't do that any differently. And I think that maybe the other panelists would also agree that it's actually very helpful to have these kind of different experiences and see the value in that. But that was also learning for me, right? At certain points, I also felt like, oh no, this is not for me. Again, I'm moving on to another position, right? And then again, maybe after half a year, I moved on to another position. So yeah, it can also be frustrating while being in this sort of in these transitions, but then looking back at it, I think it's just been so useful just figuring out what is really for you and what not, because sometimes it sounds all very abstract and you don't know whether you would actually like that job until you're actually in that job. So I think that's been just super helpful, and also gaining those experiences, even if it was a job maybe that wasn't my dream job, still I felt like I gained skills that have been useful to get me where I am right now. So I think any experience that you can have, I think it's just a value in itself. And I wouldn't put also too much pressure on you. You know, you said you're almost graduating. So yeah, be open to trying new things and see that as a positive thing, and take it with excitement, and even take it with excitement if you don't like something, a position, and don't be afraid of then leaving that position again, and looking for something else. So don't feel like you have to be stuck in one place or the other. Thank you, and over.
Yeah, I could add to that in the sense of like I feel like for me, I like in my couple years of working, I did actually experience my dream job, and it actually, even though it was the dream thing I wanted to do, the work environment of doing it was not what was sustainable for me. So I think something I had to learn is that oftentimes the dream job you want is a title. It's not capturing the actual environment in which you're working in as well. Like the nonprofit you're working in, the government office you're working in, the government agency you're working in, that also comes with the job title, or the pay that you're getting also comes with the job title. And I think that's often not talked about, of like, my dream job may have been this, and I get into it, and then my manager is toxic, creates a toxic work environment. It's just not the space that's conducive for me. So I think that's also something to like really grapple with when you're thinking about this whole concept of like a dream job. So I think that's something I learned along the way. To answer your question, I would not do it any different, because I think along the way, I think I gained a lot of like lived experiences. I did amazing, really, really cool things along the way. And this job I currently have in no way, shape, or form was anything I even planned. I literally met the council member that I'm her chief of staff for. The first day I met her was like the first day of my interview. And then she offered me to be like her lunch and budget person. And the next day she called me back and said, hey, I literally only know you for 24 hours. Will you be my chief of staff instead? And that is like such like a unheard of thing, because usually chiefs of staff would be people who were campaign advisors, worked with someone for a long time. But in my case, she was like, we feel the connection. Like, let's go for this. You've never worked in government either, but like, let's go for this. And I'm like, okay, I stepped into it with a lot of anxiety because I've never worked in government, and someone who's very anti-system. It's definitely a learning curve for me, but I think that's just me leaning into like, I think stepping away from the dream job title and leaning into like the actual things I want to do, which is serve my community, bring equity to my community, and like really be in a space of solutions. So I think definitely move yourself away from titles and move and lean more into like, what do you actually want to be doing? And in what type of work environment do you want to be doing that thing?
Thank you so much. I know if anybody else from the panel wants to answer that question. If not, I can move on to the rest of the students that have their hands raised. Okay. I saw Jada up next. So Jada, you can unmute and ask your question.
Hi, I appreciate all of the experiences and advice that you've given us so far. Because I want to get into this field, and like when I do go to my community changes classes, it's really a lot of people who are in the field and they're just coming back to school to like, because they feel really pessimistic about everything because they feel like they haven't been able to like get as much done as they thought that they could. So I wanted to like get an idea of like your perspective of like what you feel like your biggest achievement was and what you feel like your biggest failure was. That would probably help me give like a like a feel on what I could or could not be able to do. Like what would be hard for me to do.
Was that for me? Did you mention the community change studies, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Saya mentioned, this work is so personal that like often the role of an organizer is really to be sort of coordinating uh group actions and in group organizing efforts, and we build great intimate relationships with members and community and affected community members that were often unable to help. And I saw many residents that I organized with get evicted, and it's a unfortunate part of the work that is often very emotionally consuming, and that I think um I think we have to be prepared to like understand that like we might not be able to solve everything and to repair every relationship. And we deal with a lot of conflict, and sometimes we're really I think the conflict resolution is so difficult, especially in our community, because of like everything that we have internalized, and sometimes it's really difficult. And there are instances where I had to like just walk away because like I think it's just really hard to reach a point where people can like reach a point where they can live with. But I think it's also really rewarding to see um, just folks grow and take on leadership roles that they were really afraid to take on, and to share their stories and to uplift their lived experiences. And it's just really rewarding to see folks hold their elected officials accountable, and to hold legislators accountable. Um, and reach like a better living conditions, and a better community in general. It's really rewarding.
Yeah, thank you. Up next, Diana.
Hi everyone. My name is Diana. I'm a junior at City College. I am double majoring in business and international studies. And one thing that I find really difficult is like knowing the difference of, I guess, the strategies of networking within these two, I guess, different fields. And my question would be, since this is, I guess, the focus more, I guess you could say, on the international aspect of my major, would be how would one achieve successful career connections within, I guess, like political science and international studies?
I
And
could,
when-
oh,
oh,
sorry.
go ahead, Saeed. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I feel like there's a very interesting trend of like people, for example, like there's a lot of people who I went to grad school with who got MPAs who now are getting an MBA. I'm actually also considering potentially getting an MBA. You'd be surprised how very much so interconnected that work is. Like in government, in my job, I probably spend about 20% of my time talking to people who are investors, developers, work in business, or I'm talking to nonprofits about how they could be maximizing their private sponsorships and private relationships as a means of like generating revenue for their nonprofit. So there's a very much so connectedness to the work. And I think by just leaning into conversations to people, even if they're in political science, like just having conversations and building relationships with people, you will kind of start to build that it may not be a very linear connection, but you'll kind of start to spark different ways in which your MBA interest, your political science interest could be interconnected. And I think also I feel like what I had to learn, feel comfortable that like what you want isn't like a clear-cut thing. It may just be something that you yourself are creating for you because it's your interest that you're putting together to meet like a need that you're seeing, and you want to build the skills to meet that need. So I think being comfortable, like one, connecting with your alumni network, go into events around like political science, go to events of like political like campaign events. Like if there's like fundraisers, that's a very interesting space to meet both political science people, government people, and business oriented people. Like it's a very interested mix to go to those spaces as well.
I want to point that out again. Network. It's so important. You never know when somebody that you're connected with can either give you an opportunity or just inspire you, right, to take on a particular career path. So thank you for that note. And again, in the links that I'll send you, there's a link for our alumni platform. So I hope you all consider joining.
Leslie, if I
Eliana.
may, I just wanted to add on to it.
Yeah.
So I think what's also helpful is to just go to events. Like, for example, if you're based in New York, make use of also what the UN offers. There are a lot of times also events that are oftentimes, open to the public as well. For example, now, just last week, there was the Unstereotype Alliance, what it's called. That's a big global project of UN Women where UN Women actually works with media and advertising companies, right, to sort of fight stereotypes in advertising. So it's super interesting. And there, UN Women, for example, works very closely with the private sector. So that's also a big topic right now, right? How to engage with the private sector, how to engage with businesses for funding on one hand, but also such things as, how do we influence advertising? So I think there are a lot of opportunities also to work on this cross-section of policy, social, more the social impact, and then also the private sector. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Anna. Eliana, you're next.
Hi, my name is Eliana, and I'm an international studies major. So the Colin Powell School offers so many like great opportunities to network and internship and do all these other things. I was just wondering if you guys can tell me just how you guys use the opportunities that our school offers, and how did that help you like build your career if in a little bit more depth. If you could just give me a couple more examples.
Anyone in particular that you want to point that question to, or is it open to all panelists?
I guess Hannah, if you don't mind. But it's also open to all.
So yes, thank you. Sounds good. So what I did is mostly attend also a lot of events. So when I was a student, I remember there were quite a lot of also panel discussions and sort of like knowledge events. I think there were, I don't remember all of it because it was like from 2008 to 2012 that I was at the City College, but pretty much I tried to attend as much events as possible, then trying to make use of that networking that usually followed these events, just to learn more about what those panelists were also doing, right, in their job, and to learn more about what it's like, but to also sort of have that connection and just to learn more about how their realities look like. I think it's always a good way of just asking how does their daily work look like, right? What does it entail, just to get a better understanding, because I think oftentimes it all looks very, very abstract. And then, definitely to make use also of study abroad options. I think that's also really a good opportunity to learn more. I did one of those study abroads also to China back then, and I think that was super helpful to also get to experience how it works being in a totally different cultural context and experience that. I think that's always helpful as well. And then, again, doing as many internships as possible. I think that's also very helpful. Like networking, I think there was some mentoring program coming up, right, Leslie? So I think just participating in any kind of these opportunities that are now also coming out of the alumni I don't know, network or how you call it. I think that's always super helpful to make use of that. Thank you.
Anyone else from our panel that wants to take on that question as well? Okay. I want to open it up just if there's one more question. If not, we can close out for the night. Josue, okay, you can go up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for coming. I was just thinking more of post-grad and application process of law school, grad school. How would you all say going about creating a story for yourself and making sure that story is unique to who you are, but also trying to express your interests in your individual field when applying, because there's so much that goes into applying, especially now with the cases with affirmative action and all that comes along with that.
It's a great question. I feel like I don't really have like a set answer because there's so many things you can say and so many things you can do. I feel like the first thing to say there is that you have to accept that you won't be able to say everything, right? You have like 2 pages or a couple of essays to say everything that you can possibly express to these admissions officers, and that's hard. That's going to be hard no matter what you do, and no matter how good of a writer you are, no matter how good you are at condensing ideas. And so I think instead of looking for a way to talk about, the 3 million things that make up who you are, all your interests, trying to combine them all, to look for a couple of things that you think really capture who you are, where you come from, and where your interests lie, and try to draw the through line between those things, which I think is really difficult because a lot of times, when you're interning in undergrad or when you have a job somewhere or, when you develop an interest, there's not really like a very straight story to that. Like for me, like I'm working in civil rights, and it's very easy now to look back retroactively and say, I went to City College and I met all these people, and I went to New York City public schools, and my parents are immigrants, and of course the story like makes sense that way. But going through undergrad and going through law school, those weren't the thoughts in my mind. And so I feel like it's sort of an exercise in looking back at your own life and post hoc rationalizing everything you've done, which is a little silly, but in some ways it is a nice way to reflect on the things that you've done and trying to see, why did you do that internship? Was there a reason why you picked that internship over another one? If there isn't, like, is there a dream internship that you wish you had, and why do you want that one instead? So I think, yeah, my answer to all of this in the long term way that I'm saying it is that I think you should look for a couple of things that you think describe yourself really well and things that you've done in your interest, and look for a way to paint a through line through that, even if it means that you are retroactively looking back to answer that.
I'd like to add, like, I appreciate you naming like the distinction of like now, even if I went to grad school in like 2015, I think the context we're in now is vastly different. And I would definitely say for like now, if you're able to do like a year of like work post undergrad before applying to grad school, I would definitely recommend that. For me, I went straight into like grad school because I had no plan. I feel like I was a late bloomer. I was paying attention to volleyball the entire college experience, and I made my way through it all. And then I was like, oh shit, I'm graduating. What am I gonna do? And I applied for grad school versus I didn't have that like clarity of where I wanted to go. And whilst I was in grad school, I was with a whole bunch of people who had at least 5 years of work experience. So they were able to like bring real life work examples to the classroom in a way that felt more fruitful for them and just that enriched the classroom even more. So if you're able to, I think having that like work experience before grad school is really important for you, but also really important for your own application. Cause I feel like grad school will start to kind of look at like what work, real life lived experience you're bringing into this that could help enrich the classroom for like everybody. And I think that will be helpful for you. If you're going to just go straight from undergrad to grad school, I definitely want to, plus what was said before, like really lean into like your identity, but then also recognize that you're not bringing your entire self to a 2-page essay. Like pick that thing that really embodies why you get up every day and why you're really focused on doing this thing, even though you don't have it fully fleshed out. Like really sit with what that really passion for you is and really try to bring that through your essay, and always just try to have somebody else read it and proofread it and really see if it's really grasping a concept. Because in your mind, when you're writing it, it's like, yeah, this is it. But then when someone else reads it, it's not really succinct for them. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think we have room for one more question, and then we have to wrap up. Ying Rong, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong.
No, you got it right. Okay, thanks everyone. So echoing off Jose's question, so I'm thinking of applying to law school, and I've been talking to a lot of people in my honors law program and just other people who are thinking of grad school. And then a lot of us are leaning towards like working for a few years. But like from what we heard from mentors, that seems to be like a good option. But one of my concern is sometimes just because like for me, I think once I'm out of school, I don't have that discipline. And I don't want my maybe gap year of like figuring things out before I go to grad school or law school to be unproductive. And there's also that concern like you won't be in touch with keeping in touch with professors in like city college for recommendations. So I'm just wondering like in this like period after like post undergrad and before you apply to grad school or law school, what are your tips to make this like period productive and that we don't lose that discipline?
I can start answering. So first, I think you're probably underestimating yourself a little bit. I think, you have a year off and you go back to law school or grad school, and there might be, a month or two of a weird transition period where you're thinking, I haven't taken notes in a long time, or, I've forgotten how to like talk in class or something like that. But I think you'd be surprised by how quickly things come back to you, especially, given that you've been in school for probably something like 20 years now. So yeah, I think my answer to, you know, keeping yourself disciplined is that if you're only taking a year or two off, then I think you'll be surprised by how quickly things come back. I think if you are taking more years off, it may be a more difficult transition. But even still, I think the thing about law schools, especially ones that are not major cities, is that you're so quickly wrapped up in the environment of the school itself. You know, I went to Yale and we were in New Haven, and I thought, you know, if I'm in New Haven at law school, I'm talking to my friends every day who are other law students. I'm talking to professors every day. I'm reading, you know, our campus emails. I'm doing everything that's related to my law school. So when it comes to shifting my headspace into getting back to school, it's not that hard because every part of my life becomes school again. Whereas, you know, going to school in somewhere like NYU or Columbia or CUNY is sometimes I would think it's slightly more difficult because there's so many more things to do. Um, but even still, that's not a damning factor, and I think you would still have more than enough opportunity to get your head back in the game. In terms of your other questions, which I think are really smart ones to hit on. So, for example, letters of recommendation. I think one thing you can do while you're in school is just tell your professors, right, that you really enjoyed their class, you know, you love learning from them, and you would love them to write you a letter of recommendation, but maybe you'd prefer them to write it a year or two from now when you're actually applying. Most professors completely understand. And one thing that I did, even as an undergrad, which I would recommend to everyone, is that when you're asking professors to write you a letter of recommendation, instead of just going to their office one day and saying, hey, could you write me a letter of recommendation, make them a little packet. You know, the packet will describe who you are, what classes you took with them, how you did in that class, any other, you know, research projects or things that you did with them, and then a couple of things that you maybe you know, remember as standing out in your performance in that class, or things that you think are interesting as part of your own background that your professors can write about in your letter of recommendation. And I don't really feel like when I describe it that way, it sounds like I'm giving my professors like a cheat sheet to write my letter of recommendation, which in some ways it is, but it's also acknowledging the reality, which is that your professors may love you and think you're the greatest person to ever grace City College's halls. But realistically, they have a lot of students that they are working with and writing like letters of recommendation for. And that's on top of all their other work that they're always trying to do. And so making their job as easy as possible and saying, you know, I'm that student who was always the first person to raise my hand in class, and I always had a real, you know, deep interest in this topic that you brought up, will help jog their memory and probably help them remember other things about you that they can bring in and layer into your letter recommendation. So the two things there being, I would maybe warn your professors in advance that you are thinking about applying to grad school, but maybe not quite yet. And two, making a little packet for them when you actually do apply to make things easier for them on the back end. And then just, this isn't a question you asked, but it goes to your broader point, which I think Saye already brought up, which is that I really do advocate for people taking a year or two off between undergrad and grad school. And I say that with a bit of irony because I definitely didn't. And, you know, when I was an undergrad, it made so much sense to me. I said, you know I want to go to law school. What is the point of me delaying my time for another year or two just to like then go to law school later, you know? I want to be a lawyer now. But now, as a lawyer, I can look back on it and say, I'm never not going to be a lawyer anymore, right? This is my career path, and I can always transition out of it. But this is sort of what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. And I think you have so many cool opportunities and exciting things that you can do when you're young and you don't have a law degree and you have all these paths ahead of you, and they will make you a stronger advocate when you eventually do apply. And they'll help you discover your interests and make sure that you're not locked into whatever you end up seeing on the first day of classes when you get to law school. So would highly advocate for people to take time off. And it helps you if you're a lower GPA or something like that, it helps offset that. So yeah, I'll conclude there.
And with that response, we're right on time to finishing. So I just want to wrap up and with a big thank you to our panelists. Again, thank you so much. You really all do enrich the alumni community that we're building here. So I want to share my appreciation with you all. And also a big thank you to our guests that showed up today. Thank you for the wonderful questions. I sent out links again, but you will all receive an email from me with links and then ways to connect with us both at the department and also with our panelists in case you have any questions. So I hope you all have a great night. Thanks so much for joining.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks.